Welcome everyone who is here already. So today we are going to be doing a tips and tricks webinar on creating recipes and the different ways that you can do that within details. During the webinar, I do ask that everybody keep themselves on mute, and that way we can kind of move through all of the things that we need to move through today on our schedule. And then of course, at the end, if you guys have any questions, we can open the floor and everyone can ask any questions that they might have. I'm going to give it another couple minutes here to just see who shows. I think this was probably our most heavily registered for tips and tricks class. So I'm going to give it just a couple of minutes here and see who else decides to join us. We do always also send out a follow-up email, and in that email is going to have some helpful links to our support center. It's also going to have a full recap video, so if you want to go back and rewatch this at any point, you can do that as well. And then, of course, if you have any questions, like I said, we will open up the floor at the end, but you can also respond back to our emails as well. So if you'd prefer to maybe set up a one-on-one meeting or anything like that, you can do so via the email that we send out. But I hope everyone is having a fantastic Wednesday today. I know a lot of people are already starting to gear up for Mother's Day. So if you are participating in Mother's Day, I do thank you for taking some time out of your busy day to join us. And if you're not doing Mother's Day, then I thank you for taking time out anyways, because I know that all florists are very busy and we appreciate your time. Oh yeah, of course, Lily. Thanks so much for joining. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started here then with everyone that we've got. And then, of course, as people come in, we'll just let them in. All right, so I'm going to start by sharing my screen. I'm going to open up my chat and everything so I can see if anyone has any questions while we're going through. Feel free to put your questions into the chat there as we're going through. I may stop and address them as we go. Otherwise, they'll be there for the end and then I will address them at that point. So again, that chat there is for you guys to use. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started and jump right in here with the first way that we're going to be building recipes today, which is going to be on your worksheet. Personally, this is my favorite way to create a recipe. I know other people prefer to make them in their recipe gallery, so both options are certainly good, but this is my favorite way. So to get started, I've already added in my recipe here, my image, if you will. It doesn't have any of the ingredients already included in it. As we can see, if we click on that little eyeball here, it's just going to be my image. And then I went into my item gallery, which for anyone that doesn't know is located under resources under item gallery. And I starred the items that I want to utilize in this recipe over to my design board. This is going to be the fastest and easiest way to get those items onto your worksheet here. So if you're building your recipes from the worksheet, I highly recommend that you go to your item gallery first and star any and every item that you think you might use onto your design board. Of course, if you run into an area where maybe you didn't grab an item or you decided that you wanted to use an item that you originally had not decided, you can also go back to the item gallery or you can add them on here from the worksheet, which we'll go over in just a minute. So to get started on my worksheet, I've got just a generic line here for recipe building. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just drag my recipe image from the design board over onto that line itself. So it's going to start off here with just my image. I'm going to give my recipe a name. I'm just going to name it yellow and blue. And then right now I do have my default markup set at 300%. So that's what automatically pulled in there. But you can certainly change that on a per recipe basis right here from this field. Or if you want to change your default markup for this entire event, You can also go up to your options menu here in the top right-hand corner under worksheet settings, and then you can change that default markup here from this field. In this case, I'm just going to go ahead and keep that at 300%. From there, on my left-hand side, I'm going to just start dragging in the items that I'm going to utilize for this recipe. You'll notice that as I start dragging them in, they're all going to come in with a quantity of 1, and we're going to adjust that here in just a moment. So as I drag and drop, I am just going to want to drag them right into this area where it says ingredients. And then it's going to pull in any of the associated information with those items. What I mean by that is in the item gallery, if I click on my little eye icon here for this particular item, I can associate different information with this item. In this case, it's just named tulips yellow. I didn't give it a description, but you certainly can. It's got an associated image here. If I click onto the details tab, I've also marked this item as blooms and greenery, and I've given it a default cost. The default cost is going to be what I am purchasing this item from the wholesaler, and that should be your per stem cost, unless of course you've added in an item as a bunch. So like if I'm doing like a bunch of eucalyptus, I'm probably not going to do that by the stem. I can go ahead and put in a bunch price in that case and put 1 as my stems per bunch. But in most cases, I'm going to put my per stem cost, and then I can also put in how many stems per bunch I have. All right, so it pulled in the cost that I had already determined right here into my cost column. And then from there, I'm just going to go ahead and start updating my quantities. So I'm just going to go ahead and put in some generalized quantities here for this. And then I'm going to keep that at 1. And then I'm just going to guesstimate here on my crushed glass. All right, so then from there, what it's going to do is it's going to automatically do all my math for me as well. So right now I've got my cost here at 16 cents. It's then going to go ahead and do the math of 3 at 16 cents times that by my markup was just 300%. And then it's going to add that cost back in to give me my price. I do get a lot of questions about how, we get to the price from the cost. A lot of confusion there on like markup calculation. So I just want everyone to know that it's going to be cost times markup plus cost again. So we always want to make sure to add that cost back in. And then from there, it's going to do the math on adding all of these items up and give me what I should be charging my client here. So that total price. You can also choose to adjust the cost here on a per recipe basis and on a per event basis. So for example, if I'm ordering things Mother's Day week for an event that's not Mother's Day, but it's just falling in that same week, we all know that that price is going to go up. The price of all of my items is going to go up because, so many people are ordering product that week. So I might choose, because I know that this event is going to be in that week, to go ahead and up my quantity or my cost here on a per stem basis. So maybe I want to switch this from $1.90 to $2, so on and so forth. From there, down at the bottom here, I can give my recipe a description, and then I can also go in and put any notes. I do always recommend that the description be something that you're going to be planning to have more client facing, something that you want to have on your proposal. And then the notes can be more for you guys on the back end. And then when you get to your proposal, you're going to be able to choose which of those you want to show or both. All right, so that's my recipe here. Now I've got that created. From there, if this is something that you think you're going to utilize over and over again, maybe this particular color scheme has been really popular, I can go up to my recipe options here in the top right-hand corner, and I'm going to update my gallery recipe. The reason I'm updating it and not creating a new gallery recipe is because when I initially added it onto my design board here on the left, that automatically deemed it to be a recipe. Even though it was just an image, it didn't have any associated items at that time, it still is classified now as a recipe. So as it stands now, it's just a recipe with an image. So by updating that gallery recipe, it's going to assign all of these ingredients over to the existing recipe. So now if I go in and I view that recipe here, it's going to have all of those associated ingredients, quantities, etc., that I had deemed there in my recipe. All right, and then next, if I wanted to, let's say, create a secondary version of that same recipe, this is a question that comes up fairly often. Go ahead and just put in second version. I can drag and drop that recipe now over onto my worksheet. And maybe I want to make a couple of changes. Maybe instead of the yellow tulips, I want to switch that out for something else, a different color tulip. In this case, I'm just going to go ahead and adjust my quantities on this. So now I've got a different version here of this same recipe. And again, I can go up to recipe options and create a new gallery recipe. So I'm maintaining the original version, but I'm also going to now have a secondary version with different quantities in it. If you're doing this and you're keeping that same recipe image, I do always recommend that you change the name in some way, so that way you can differentiate between which one is which. But ultimately, you're just going to go ahead and click that new gallery recipe, and it will save that secondary version. In addition to that, you can also put that second version over onto your design board here by clicking on the favorite recipe icon there at the bottom. And then once you do that, you'll be able to basically copy and paste that recipe into another line. All right, so it looks like we've got a couple of questions here in the chat. So can you also add items from the inspiration gallery? Sue, you can add images from the inspiration gallery, but not items. So if you were going to make a recipe with an image that was in your inspiration gallery, what I would recommend that you do is to click the plus symbol on this line, add a blank recipe, and then you can click on that watermark image, which is going to pull up a box that contains all of your inspiration photos here. So from there, I can choose to select any one of these pre-existing images that I have here, and then utilize that as my recipe image. So yes, you can use images from your inspiration gallery. All right, Rue Brown says, the thing about the notes section is that it doesn't print when you print your recipes for an event. I've started putting everything in the description. Rue, I'm happy to tell you that as of maybe 2 months ago, that is no longer correct. On the let me go ahead and just save this. So as far as recipes go, for anyone that doesn't know, we do have a document here within each one of our events, and it's located under that document section here at the top. It's going to be called the recipe PDF. Oh, you know, I don't think I put any quantities in here. Let me go back real quick. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just put in like a quantity of 3, let's say, and put notes go here. And descriptions go here. And then I'll just go ahead and save that as a version. Okay, so underneath the documents in the recipe PDF area, you can print out a full list of the recipes for a specific event. What Rue is referring to is that previous, maybe like 2 months ago, only the descriptions were showing on the recipe PDF, or excuse me, the notes. However, now you can have both. So it has descriptions and notes. And we've also added the option for the pricing to be here as well. The way that you change that is up at the top under settings. You can now toggle your descriptions on and also your line item prices. Notes show up by default. And this is going to be something that has to be turned on a per user basis. So like, for example, Rue, if you have it on, Susie Q, who also works with you in details, is not going to automatically update. Both of you will need to go in there and change those settings. Of course. All right, so now that we've built our recipe in the worksheet, let's go ahead and we're going to go over to resources under recipe gallery, and we're going to build our recipe there. It's going to be a similar process, but there are some key differences here in this area. I am going to use that same photo. I'm going to go into just my recipes here. And from there, I'm going to click on the plus add new option in the upper right-hand corner, and I'm going to put new recipe. From there, I'm going to go ahead and give my recipe an image. All right, I can give my recipe a name. I'm going to name this one blue and yellow since I did the other one yellow and blue. Okay, next, down at the bottom, I've got an area where I can add ingredients. So there's not going to be like an area where you go and you pick all of your ingredients and then you go in and you add them here. In this area, what you're going to want to do is start typing in the name of your item, and then you can give it a quantity. Then you're going to go to the next ingredient, start typing that one in, and again, give it a quantity. So you'll do this for each one of the different items that you want to add in there. And then once you've filled out all of your different items here, you have a couple of other options. First is going to be your description. So you can choose to write out a description, or we also have this copy list option that will allow you to copy a full list of all of the ingredients that you've already added in there. And then you can paste that right into the description. Also, just like the worksheet, on the right-hand side, there's going to be an area where you can adjust your markup. It's defaulted right now for me for 300%, but of course, you can also change that if you'd like. And then down at the bottom here on price, you're going to see this little calculator, and you can click that to have it automatically populate what the price should be based on your cost and markup. Next is going to be your category. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and put it as centerpieces, but of course you could put it in there as anything that you'd like. Recipe categories are customizable, so you can pretty much put it in any category that you'd like. Right now, I'm going to go ahead and put it in centerpieces. And then as you start adding in categories, you will see those options on the search panel, which we can look at in just a moment. Below that, you're also going to see an area where you can choose a style. I'm just going to go ahead and select one. And then from there, I can go ahead and click that save button down at the bottom. So now here's my new recipe. And now it's got those items that I added in there. It's got my image, etc. And so I can come in here and choose to view this at any point, and I can also add it onto my design board for any future event by clicking on the star in the upper right-hand corner. Also, just like I was mentioning, if we click on this magnifying glass here at the top of the design board, you can search for your recipes based on the things that you've attached to them. So for example, I gave my recipe a name. I can come in and search by name. I can also search for recipes that include a specific item. So for example, if I wanted to search for recipes that included the yellow tulips. Then I've got my categories. So based on how I categorize that specific recipe, I can choose to select that category to search by. And again, as you add new categories, they're going to populate here in this area. So it's dynamic. As you add them, they will add over here onto your search area. Next is going to be styles. So again, I can search by style here. And then some things that we didn't actually select for our recipe is going to be colors and then months of availability. So colors and availability are actually going to be determined by the items that you've included in your recipe. So for each item, you can choose like associated colors, and then you can choose different availabilities for it. So if you know that a specific item is only available in a couple of months, you can add that there as well. And then when you add those items into a recipe, the recipe is automatically going to take on all of that information. So it'll have the colors that are associated with that item over here in your right-hand corner. So I've got like yellows, greens, blues, based on the things that I have here. And then also the months of availability for those items. And of course, I can search on the recipe panel by those things. Christina says, is there an easy/quick way to edit existing recipes to add category? Yeah, you can just click on any one of your different recipes, hit that edit option, and then change out your category here. So like in this case, it doesn't have one, so I can put in centerpieces and then save. I hope that answers your question, Christina, but let me know if it doesn't. All right, so the last and final way that we're going to build a recipe is actually going to be in the item gallery. So I'm going to head over to my resources and I'm going to go to item gallery. Good question, Pamela. So Pamela says, where do the items come from? Are those already in the system or something that we have to manually add with our wholesaler? So Details comes preloaded with over, I want to say it's like 7,000 items right now. So they come from various different partners, growers, suppliers, and then some that were not associated with any of our partners. They were just automatically uploaded into Details. If there's an item that is not in here that we've not added already, then yes, you'll have to add that in yourself. And that comes in here in the item gallery. You can look through all of the different collections that we have here. You can also search. So if there's a specific item like eucalyptus that you're looking for, you can search for it and see if it's in here. And if it's not, then you're going to click on the plus add new option here in the top right-hand corner. You'll have to be inside of a collection. So like, for example, the My Items. And then when you click on the plus add new, you're going to have an option to add a new item. And then you'll fill out all of the associated information with that item. So upload a photo, put in details like the cost, stems per bunch, things like that. All right, so going back here, I'm going to go ahead and just add a recipe onto my design board. All right, and then once I have it on here, I'm going to click on this little folder icon in the top right-hand corner. Right now, that recipe has no ingredients. However, I'm going to go into my all items here. You can also search by items if you prefer to do it that way. You can certainly do it that way as well. And then once I'm inside of my collection, I'm going to go into my options at the bottom, selection mode, and then click on any one of the items that I want to utilize in this recipe. For the sake of time, I'm just going to go ahead and grab a couple of different items here. And what I'm going to do next is then go to the more option at the bottom, and you'll see an option to add to recipe. From there, it's going to add those items over into the recipe, just like it would with any other recipe, and it's going to separate out based on item type, the same way that it does on your design board. So now, if you look at those items, it's going to have them already in there. You will need to go in and adjust those quantities at some point. So you can do that when you add it to the worksheet, or you can do it when you add it to the recipe gallery. But that's just a quick way to grab those items while you're already in the item gallery. And then that way, all you'll need to do is adjust those quantities. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and open up the floor for questions. Anybody have questions on creating recipes in any of the 3 areas that we just talked about? And you can put it in the chat, or you can turn on your mic, up to you. All right, looks like no one's got questions. Oh, there we go, Lily. Okay, let's say you update a stem cost price in the item section. Will that change be reflected within the recipes? Good question, Lily. So let me go ahead and go over here to my worksheet and kind of show you guys how this will work. The short answer is no, it's not going to automatically update the things that are on your worksheet, because if you've already sent that person a quote, they've already accepted it, you're like, a week away from the event, you're probably not going to want it to update those costs automatically, when you update it, because you want to update it for everything going forward, but maybe not something that you've already booked. So in that case, you're going to have this little icon here at the top of the worksheet. It's going to be right next to your grand total. It'll be like a little money sign. When you click on it, it's going to let you know which of the items that are on your worksheet have changed in cost. It's going to tell you what the worksheet cost is, or what you have it on there for, and then what your current cost in your item gallery is. From there, you can choose, yes, I want to update this one. If you have a list of like 10 items, you can say, I want to update these 3, but not the other 7. Or of course, you can choose to update everything. And then when you hit that update worksheet option, then you can go onto your worksheet and it will automatically update that cost there. All right, so Sue says, what is the purpose of the inspiration gallery if the item info doesn't carry over with them? So I think the question would be better phrased in what's the purpose of our most recent update in that area for adding in all of the information that goes along with those inspirations, if I'm correct. So the point of adding in all of that information there in your inspiration gallery is strictly for searching purposes. So if you've got 200 inspiration photos that are all falling into a particular color scheme or a theme, like maybe you have a boho collection, and in that collection it would have inspiration images for you to use on a boho event. The purpose of the updates there in that area are so you can go in and search, or go into a collection of boho items and pull up all of the ones that fit into a specific set of criteria. I hope that answers your question. Okay, Christina said, I'm not sure if you showed, does when you are creating a recipe from the worksheet, can you also do a category for the recipe as well? Working on a lot of retail and funeral stuff for a website right now, so definitely want them saved in separate categories for my wedding work. So yes and no. So right here on this area where you're directly building on the worksheet, no, there's not an area for you to add an associated category to it. However, once you've saved that and you have it on your design board over here, then yes, you can click on the eyeball icon, and then that same like edit modal that you would see in the recipe gallery is going to pop up, and you can edit it from here to add a category and then save it. And that will update in your recipe gallery. All right, Pamela says, is there a spot that tells you exactly what is needed to be ordered for the event, or do we go through each recipe and add up? Pamela, so that's going to be found on the cost page here. And yes, Rue, I will do that in just a second. On the cost page, it's going to itemize out each one of the items that you need for this particular event and the quantity that are needed. It's also going to tell you your estimated stem cost, meaning what you put on your worksheet as your estimation of what you were going to spend per stem, and also your estimated total for the total amount of all of the stems that you're using across that particular recipe, or excuse me, event. And then you can download this as a CSV or print that table and bring it to your wholesaler if you have somebody that you use. Or you can also order from one of our wholesalers here in details in this wholesale quotes area. All right, so Rue asked if we can show how to copy and paste a recipe from one line item to another. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and use this recipe. It doesn't have anything in it, but let me go ahead and just pull over some random items here. All right, so let's just say this is my recipe. It's my bridesmaids bouquet, and I'm going to use that in my maid of honors bouquet as well. So I'm going to go ahead and in the upper right-hand corner, I'm going to go to recipe options, and I'm going to favorite that recipe. From there, I'm going to make my second line, and I'm just going to drag and drop that recipe right onto the second line. And that's our copy paste. All right, Christina said, so if you add a recipe, does it automatically add to your design board, or do you have to go back into your resources and start it? So Christina, no, it does not automatically go into, oh, okay. Yeah. So you'll, yeah, you'll just go ahead and you can favorite it from there. Otherwise, if it's something that you're building on your worksheet from scratch, you can also just add it directly onto the design board. That way it's already there. And then when you add your items into your recipe over here on the worksheet, you can go to recipe options and update gallery recipe. That way all of the ingredients will then be associated with that recipe image that you added on the design board already. Oh, Rue, you're not dumb. It's actually a very common question, simply because of the fact that it doesn't say copy paste. All right, anybody else have any questions or anything else that they'd like to go over before we wrap up our webinar here today? I'll go ahead and give it a minute and see if anybody goes in and puts a question there in the chat. I do also want to remind everyone that we are going to send out a follow-up email, and in that follow-up email, it's going to have a series of different support articles in relation to building recipes on the worksheet, in the recipe gallery, and also on the item gallery there. And then you can also rewatch this webinar. In that email, it'll have the full recap that you can watch at any point. And we're also going to have a recap blog of all of the highlights, so you can review that as well. And it doesn't look like I have any more questions coming in, so I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. If anyone comes across any questions at a later point, maybe you didn't think about it when we were on or anything like that, you can certainly email us at support@detailsflowers.com. We'd be happy to assist you there. And otherwise, I appreciate everyone's time and thank you for joining me today. I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day. Of course, Lily, thank you.